today, right now. If you feel weary, rest your feet and put down your cares, if only for an hour. If you feel joyful, let your soul dance and be infectious in the best kind of way. But however you feel, wherever you are on life's journey, whatever you want to become in this oh so wondrous and struggling world, welcome. Welcome to you today, right now. Come, let us worship together. I invite you to rise and embody your spirit to join our voices in our opening hymn, number 361 from the Gray Hymnal, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. And I'll even yell out the words for you if you don't want to look at the hymnal. Please remain standing as Stephanie Aldrich lights our chalice. These words are reading number 457 from the Gray Hymnal. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Jesus told this story in the book of Luke. There once were two parents who had two children. And younger child said to their parents, "Please give me my share of the inheritance," which was impatient, kind of rude. But the parents nonetheless divided the money and the property and gave it to their children. Then younger child left for a distant land, where they quickly squandered all their money. And as soon as the money was gone, a severe famine arose in that country, and younger child needed to eat. They went to work for a farmer who sent them in the fields to feed the pigs. They were so hungry, they could have eaten the pigs' food. Yes, they were so hungry. And then they remembered that even their parents' servants had enough to eat. And so they decided to crawl back to their parents and say, "My parents, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your child. Treat me as one of your hired servants." And then they went home. But while they were still a far way off, their parents saw them and felt compassion. They ran to and embraced and kissed younger child. And younger child said, "My parents, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your child." But the parents said to the servants, "Bring quickly the best robe and put it on them, and put a ring on their hand and shoes on their feet, and prepare a grand feast, and let us eat and celebrate. For this, our child was dead, but now was alive again. They were lost, but now are found." And the celebration began. Now, older child was in the field, and as they approached the house, they heard the music and the dancing, and they called one of the servants and asked what was going on. And the servant said, "Your sibling has come home, and your parents are celebrating, because your sibling came back safe and sound." But older child was angry and refused to go in. The parents came out and asked them to join in the party, but they answered, "Look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never even had a measly pizza party for me that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this child of yours arrived, this one who has wasted your money on foolish things, you pulled out all of your stops for them." And the parents said, "Older child, you are and always have been with us, and all that is ours is yours. It is fitting to celebrate and be glad, for your sibling was dead, but now is alive. They were lost, but now they are found." Thanks for listening. Please remain seated for our prayer hymn, number 347 in the Gray Hymnal, "Gather the Spirit."
Oh,
silence that follows a spoken prayer, you are invited to come forward and light a candle for any joys or concerns you hold in your heart this morning. Dear God, we arrive in this sacred moment just as we are. We come here from all kinds of places, from all kinds of feelings, and from all kinds of changes. All kinds. This past Thursday, summer reached its halfway point. The days are hot and the nights are noticeably longer. The spring flowers have wilted. The corn has arrived at the market, and the squash are knocking at the door. But things may not be the way we want them to be. We can be so demanding of you, of our neighbors, of our families, of ourselves. Dear God, just for a few minutes, let us drop our requirements. Just for a few minutes, let us simply be here with one another in love. Amen. I will light a candle for the joys and concerns of those beloveds joining us virtually, and a candle for all else that we hold in our hearts and mind this morning. If your heart is hurting, know that your community is here to help, and Reverend Jane is returning on Tuesday. Please reach out with any needs. These are the words of the scientist and Native American Robin Wall Kimmerer. Even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. I choose joy over despair, not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift. In this moment, and with joy, let us do our part, for we too have received much from this wounded world, and it is by returning the gift that we help to heal it as we build and perpetuate our beloved community. For those of you watching this service online, you may contribute to a virtual offering plate using the donate button on our website or by mailing a check to the church office. I invite the ushers to come forward to receive the offering. I now invite Cindy Williams forward to the pulpit to tell us about this month's special offering for Neighbor Network.
Good morning. We have collected for Neighbor Network other times. It's a local nonprofit that really exists to do three things: school supplies this time of year, food at Thanksgiving, and food and Christmas presents in December. So the local nonprofit is run by Karen Mosby, who we have done work with for a number of years, but today we're collecting for school supplies. They put together backpacks. She has a great big garage, huge. I once saw the setup with lots of tables and lots of school supplies that go out to Howard County kids, and I think also to other counties as well. So thank you for your generosity today.
I invite the ushers forward again. all that you do for our church and its wider concerns, we give thanks. Our reading this morning comes from the book of John, book 5, verses 8 and 9a. Jesus saith unto him, Rise, take up thy bed, and walk. And immediately the man was made whole, and took up his bed, and walked. And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit, to join our voices in hymn 83 from the great hymnal, Winds Be Still. Back in my 20s, I read a lot of Kurt Vonnegut Jr., and some of it is still with me almost 40 years later. In his semi-autobiographical book, Palm Sunday, there is an essay called Triage. Triage is a French word which means sorting, though I can't help but think that it is related to the number 3. But I may be wrong. Nonetheless, according to the Wikipedia, the practice of triage may have originated in the Napoleonic Wars, when, after a battle, the medics would divide the survivors into 3 categories. 1, those who are likely to live, regardless of what care they receive. 2, those for whom immediate care might make a difference in outcome. And 3, those who are unlikely to live, regardless of what care they receive. Triage was a way for the battlefield medics to decide how to use their limited resources to save the most lives. Variations on triage are used to this day in medicine, both military and civilian, and, as Kurt Vonnegut points out in his essay, general life. I'm going to share 3 of Vonnegut's examples from his essay. The first relates triage as something that happens to us. I quote, "Yes, and I was a mediocrity in the anthropology department of the University of Chicago after the Second World War. Triage was practiced there as it is practiced everywhere. There were those students who would surely be anthropologists, and the most winsome faculty members gave them intensive care. A second group of students, in the opinion of the faculty, just might become so-so anthropologists, but more probably would use what they had learned about Homo sapiens to good advantage in some other field, such as medicine or law, say. The third group, of which I was a member, might as well have been dead or studying chemistry. We were given, as a thesis advisor, the least popular faculty member, untenured and justifiably paranoid. His position paralleled that of the waiter Ms. Poulet in the stories of Ludwig Bemelmans, whom you may remember as the author of Madeline, about the fictitious Hotel Splendide. Ms. Poulet had the table next to the kitchen, and his specialty was making sure that certain sorts of guests at the hotel restaurant never came back again." End quote. The next quotation is the flip side of the first, an example of the triage that we practice on others. "And I myself have since practiced triage in university settings, in writing classes at the University of Iowa, at Harvard, at City College. 1/3 of every class was corpses, as far as I was concerned. What's more, I was right." That would be a better name for this planet than Earth, since it would give people who just got here a clearer idea of what they were in for. Triage. Welcome to triage. End quote. The third and final quotation hints at the importance of the middle third in a triage. In view of the fact that I had nearly flunked chemistry, mechanical engineering, and anthropology, and had never taken a course in literature or composition, I was elected to write about literary style. I was more than glad to do this, but I must bring up the joyless subject of triage again. For I intended my essay not for the bottom third of would-be writers, the warm corpses, nor for the top third, those who are or could be brilliant writers anyway. My essay is for the middle third, and it goes like this. End quote. The middle third. After reading this, I realized that a sermon leads to a kind of triage in the pews. 1, there are those that already believe the message and are happy to receive it multiple times. They are the choir, in the phrase, preaching to the choir. 2nd, we have those who are not sure about the message, but are willing to give it a listen. And 3rd, there are those that do not believe the message and are neither willing nor happy to receive it, nor willing to listen. My sermon is for the middle third, and it goes like this. One of the reasons that I go in for Unitarian Universalism, and for Channing Memorial Church in particular, is the emphasis on pushing its members toward the middle third of this triage. We aren't hardcore believers who would damn those who disagree with us. We aren't hardcore disbelievers who would treat anyone who believes in something with contempt. We are willing to listen. We accept the rigor of science, but we also revel in the mysteries of the Spirit writ large. Many of my sermons contained a kind of public service announcement about our church, usually right after the lead-in. Looks like it's about that time. This announcement is often about our use of spiritual language at the church or about the culture of our pulpit-pew relationship. The purpose of this announcement is to encourage you, the congregants, to open your minds and hearts. Which of the two I choose depends on which buttons I think my sermon might press. Today, I'm going to talk about both. Actually, I don't think I will be pressing too many buttons today, but one never knows. I could get lucky. So, part one. Here at Channing Memorial Church, we use spiritual language, including the word God. And while you may not be comfortable with that, I encourage you to let go of your discomfort and journey with us. In part two, there is a covenant of worship here. The minute I stepped into this pulpit, I was charged with speaking my truth. And the minute you sat in that pew, you were charged to listen. Not to agree, but to listen with an open heart. Now what? We had a theme and variations on triage. We had a variation of the prodigal son. So next up will be theme and variations in the Bible, theme and variations on the self, and then I'll wrap up, as I often do, with Jesus, because he always seems to pack a good punch. I usually try to use the Bible in my sermons. What can I say? It's a good source. There are two ways I do this. One way is to start from a particular biblical passage and develop the sermon from there, looking for insights and stories from life. And the other way is to start with a theme or an idea and look for supporting and insightful passages from the Bible, which can be tricky. So there I was, trying to shoehorn the Bible into theme and variations, when I had the oh duh moment. The Gospels of the New Testament are a theme and variations. The Gospels, four tellings of the same story, the life and death of Jesus. I've always been partial to the book of Matthew, probably because it just came first, though not first written, which is believed to be Mark. But I also love some of the stories in the other Gospels that are not in Matthew. For instance, the story of the prodigal son in the book of Luke. And so I got to wondering, which events and stories are present in all four of the Gospels? Because any such would surely point toward the important themes of the New Testament. And any one of these themes would surely be good sermon fodder. But how to find such? I am no biblical scholar. Oh, wonder. How many goodly web pages are there here? How beauteous the internet is. Oh, brave new world that has such information in it. Yes, I did a web search, and in a matter of minutes, I found a chart that listed chapters and verses of all events and stories that are common to all four Gospels. Amazing. So I picked one of these common stories. And here is the variation from the book of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 1 through 8. And he entered into a ship and passed over and came to his own city. And behold, they brought to him a man sick of the palsy, lying on a bed. And Jesus, seeing their faith, said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, be of good cheer, thy sins be forgiven thee. And behold, certain of the scribes said within themselves, This man blasphemeth. And Jesus, knowing their thoughts, said, Wherefore think ye evil in your hearts? For which is easier to say, Thy sins be forgiven thee, or to say, Arise and walk? But that ye may know the Son of Man hath power on earth to forgive sins. Then saith he to the sick of the palsy, Arise, take up thy bed, and go unto thine house. And he arose, and departed to his house. But when the multitude saw it, they marveled, and glorified God, which had given such power unto men. The variations of this story in Mark and Luke are clearly similar, but also markedly different. For instance, they both mention that the crowd around Jesus was so dense that the man with the palsy was lowered into the room from a hole in the roof. For whatever reason, Matthew didn't think this was important, and he ostensibly knew Mark's version since that was written first. I'm sure that much could be and has been written about the four versions of this story. But this morning I want to focus on our reading, which was a variation from the book of John. Jesus saith unto him, Rise, take up thy bed and walk. And immediately the man was made whole, and took up his bed and walked. What is going on here? John has cut the whole story down to a 1.5 verse punchline. There is more of a story in John, but it is different enough that the scholars who made the table on the webpage did not want to say that it was the same. As an aside, it seems that this kind of thing happens somewhat frequently in the book of John. They stuck to the healing words and the miracle of the healing, which are pretty much identical, and which I will take as the theme of the story. We will come back to it. But for now, let's move on to theme and variations on the self. At some point in my life, I accepted the wisdom of the aphorism, you can't change other people, you can only change yourself. But more recently, probably under the influence of mild Buddhist thought and definitely through the lens of today's sermon, I would add, you can't change yourself, you can only change how you react to things, and most of the things we do to try to change ourselves are really just variations of the same underlying theme. And we would do well to realize just what that theme is before proceeding further. As a personal example, I have learned that when I take a fancy to something, I dive into it. I immerse myself in it. I structure my life and thoughts around it. And while this allows me to accomplish many things, it also has a darker side. In my formative years, the object of my fancy was the game of chess. But over the course of my life, and to this very day, there have been any number of variations. Games, activities, people, and most recently, fountain pens. When I was thinking about attempts to change ourselves, the unusual song, Seen and Not Seen by the Talking Heads came to mind. The spoken lyrics tell the story of a person who decides that, via sheer force of will and over a long time, they will change the structure of their face. The song continues with various thoughtful musings, and And the last one is the person wondering if this undertaking was in fact a mistake. Now, I have never tried to change my faith, but I freely admit that I have embarked on long-term projects that, when I look at them honestly, are a little more than vanity. But in spite of all this, in spite of how difficult it can be, there are times when people do, in fact, change. A change of theme, not just another variation. But changing our themes is hard work, and it is scary. The story of the prodigal son from the book of Luke is a kind of triage. I shared a gender-neutral version of it with you during the story this morning. Older child is the faithful, loyal, well-behaved one. You know, the rule follower, the one who does everything right, the top third of the triage. Younger child, the prodigal, is, well, not that. They squander their inheritance in a far land, wasting their substance with riotous living. Definitely bottom third triage material. The parents give them up for dead. What about the middle third? The story is not over. The prodigal runs into hard times and famine. They remember that at home, even the lowliest servant has enough to eat, and they decide to go home and beg their parents to take them back, not as a child, but as a servant. Because the prodigal has begun in earnest to change their theme, they have become a different person. No wonder the parents are so happy upon the return. The once prodigal child has gone from the bottom third of the triage to the middle third. It remains to be seen whether they will make something of their life. They have the potential to live, but it is up to them. After some grousing by older sibling and a gentle reproach from the parents, the story ends. Sometimes in this life, we make poor choices. Sometimes in this life, we are beaten down. Sometimes in this life, we become sick. Bad things happen, and when they do, it is easy to let these bad things form the dominant themes in our lives. We identify with them, and we become paralyzed, powerless, palsied in our beds. But Jesus' message is simple. Change is possible. Because you are not the theme you labor under. You are not the sum of your misfortunes. You are a child of God, and you can take up your bed and walk home. Amen. Please rise and bow to your spirit to join our voices in hymn number 121 from the gray hymnal, We'll Build a Land.
Oh,
Go forth. Do not despair. Do not be paralyzed. For you have the power to arise, to take up your bread and walk out into the world and do what you know in your heart is right. Amen.